Good time zone, everybody. We're back again with another commentary for the second Iceberg that I did. Yeah, this one was quite a leap, I would say, for compared to the first one anyway. If you watched Tom's stream, you'd know kind of why that's the case. So, yeah, I guess we'll start with talking about just the title screen. The artwork is thanks to AinemsWork. Sometimes I'm not sure how to say the name. It's either Ainems or AinemsWork. I commissioned this a while ago now, and yeah, it is straight up the Kingdom Hearts 2 main menu inspired. So I really love how it turned out. The text is something I found online, and I was able to customize kind of like the outline and whatnot, so I really love how that turned out. Again, it's like a Kingdom Hearts font style, basically. So again, given that it's one of Tom's favorite franchises, I wanted to kind of lean into it, and so we'll see what I do for next time. It probably will be Kingdom Hearts related again, but we'll see. So we'll just get started with a new game and kind of go through it. I don't know if I'm going to do... Oh, we'll just see how it goes. So we have the...
We did some good work today. But plowing to next week's Iceberg takes more work than I thought.
Yeah, so we have a couple returning characters here. Technically, all of them are returning. We have Pippin, of course, which we meet in the first one, who is technically optional to meet. I can't remember if I had mentioned that. I think I did, because Pippin's event was tied to a trigger or a switch for when you enter the third layer, so, of the first Iceberg. So thankfully Tom had explored enough to be able to find Pippin. And Pippin is voiced by the wonderful Ghostly Calamity. Originally, if you heard the teaser before, which was of this cutscene, Pippin was voiced by myself, and I was going for a more like Goofy the character-esque voice, which I think had it at the time. It was kind of what I wanted, but then talking to Ghostly Mystic and Vanessa about it, they all kind of agreed that Pippin should have more like a more adolescent, a younger, like tone, and so thankfully Ghostly is good with doing voices, and managed to give Pippin their voice. So, and yeah, Pippin still talks not in like clear English, because he's still learning, but he'll probably talk like that for a while, just so Ghostly can do voices. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but thanks to you all, of course, me, it has become much easier. And I did do this scene over. If you listen to the teaser, it is different. Like, my complexion is different for these lines, just because I feel like they could have been better, and so hopefully they turned out okay based on that.
Well, I'm definitely ready to call it a day.
Then we have Velazark from the Room of Forbidden Lore. Not exactly the same model, but the same person who did the previous sprite, White underscore Dragon, did this one too. And so I figured as a sprite that can actually move, this one was fitting. So Hydraxian we do technically see, because Zekrom transforms into him in the boss fight at the end of the first one. But the way Zekrom's powers work, he was technically borrowing like his form. But that would be talking about it loosely and not really explaining how it works. But that's kind of how it works.
Well, you all did great. So let's all get some well-deserved rest.
And so, obviously, Zekrom senses that something isn't right.
Whoever you are, I suggest you reveal yourself.
I have a feeling this guy's
And then this is me again, modifying my voice. Because obviously I didn't want him to sound like a normal person.
When everything on this iceberg is purposefully chosen, you cannot simply hide as the object, especially on an untouched section like this one.
Seems you're more meticulous than I gave you credit for.
I love this background
Enough.
music.
Who
And
are you?
We'll get
And
to
what
the
do you
music,
want?
as that was kind of a issue, which was very unfortunate because it should not have been an issue. So, but yeah, the way this one started,
I am your end.
I needed somebody to. Well, again, part of it is like I need a reason for there to be an iceberg, which I talk about at the end in the credits. But figuring out a way for there to be an iceberg and how to change it up. And so I thought, well, what if Zekrom gets injured and like corrupt and is like the target of corruption? What if the only way to get rid of the corruption was to dive into his mind? And so what would his mind look like? And I was thinking, like, well, make it like the iceberg, because why not? It's his mind, so why wouldn't it look like that? But yeah, this fight is, you are meant to lose, but you can win. So I think what we'll just do is go through it. Now I noticed that this song did not have copyright, which is interesting. We'll just do the direct sync, damage. Do some magic. Ice Nine Thrills is actually a play on the band name Ice Nine Kills, which I guess if you listen to Ice Nine Kills, you would kind of see that, but given that my music taste is probably really different from everybody else's, I would not be surprised if nobody got that. So I'm kind of going through how to make all the mods different in terms of like kind of their playstyle. Zekrom is definitely meant to be like the heavy magic based, like heavy magic user who has a couple supports but also like very damaging magic attacks. But he has to link first before being able to do that, so it's kind of a double-edged sword for him. But that's kind of why he has the one support mode to keep everybody, alive and well. He is definitely an offensive magic user. which kind of makes this battle a little difficult because it does rely a bit on RNG and kind of knowing trial and error.
No, this can't be.
I will have to say, doing the lines for the big bad here, like, it's really fun to play as the villain, like, because you can just be kind of unhinged, kind of get away with saying things. Of course, I don't get super dark with our big bad here in terms of what he says, but you can definitely kind of be a bit mean, at least.
Joke's on you. Death means nothing here in the Dapper Kingdom.
What I love about this line is it's meant to be super serious, but then he ends with saying Dapper Kingdom. So, I mean, it's like a serious line, but about something involving something that's kind of silly sounding. Like it's like a line you would hear from Kirby or something.
I know all about your silly little shadow realm.
And of course, it's interesting that he knows about this.
You won't die. That's not how.
And of course, the reveal is that he's not a single entity.
What?
Let your suffering begin.
That he's part of a bigger group. He's not just alone in his fight with the Dapper Kingdom.
Zekrom!
Of course, we got the group looking for Zekrom because he didn't keep walking with them.
Zekrom!
Of course, then you probably think, like, well, why didn't they notice that he was gone? So,
He was right behind us a minute ago. Where could he have gone?
of course, Velazark is also a modification. He does sort of sound like our big bad, but a little more ghost-like and not as demonic, I would say. Hydraxian was also voiced by me. I guess I forgot to say that. So it's a lot of changing my voice and kind of making it sound differently.
Pippin, look, over there.
Zekrom!
Oh no. We need to get him to Ghostly Calamity now.
I was very proud of that roar. I could have just used the roar that I used for Hydraxian's attack, but I wanted to kind of make it my own in a way. And of course, we got the Shadow Realm,
Come on, you idiot. Snap out of it already.
and there's Ghostly voicing themselves. I need to make sure to put a filter, or like kind of what I do for Ghostly's voice for Ghostly is I do like a not a decibel, that's not the right word, a key change almost, you could call it. Like I go up a step and down a step and then just play them at the same time. That's kind of how I do Ghostly's voice. Of course, Ghostly voice is the default, and then I just add on top and on bottom. Just so Ghostly sounds more ethereal, because Ghostly isn't like Ghostly's almost like a supernatural entity in the world of the Dapper Kingdom. So now, if you notice,
Any changes, Ghostly?
I can't remember. I think that was an ostrich just beforehand, but now it's a cow. So whenever somebody enters, something changes. And so when Steffi comes in, obviously a Highland cow has to appear, right? And Steffi was gracious enough to come back and voice herself, and she did a incredible job. Yeah, we'll just keep going.
None yet, Your Majesty. I've tried everything. Medicine, various types of alchemy and enchantments. Mystic even used the wake-up slap technique.
And that was kind of their idea for the how to try and wake up Zekrom, but it had to be Mystic because Mystic's a bit of the chaotic one.
Nothing's
so-
working.
But of course, nothing was working.
We can't give up. There's got to be something that's going to snap Zekrom out of this state.
Tom shows up, and that armor turns into a chest. Just for that one doesn't have, I guess, as a tied meaning, but just to kind of show a change. And of course, Tom doesn't have a voice because Tom voices himself with the live stream, which I think is really fun. Which kind of means I can get him to say anything, but also I don't want to just make him say anything that I want him to. So, but it is kind of funny. That's how it works.
Pippin and the others found Zekrom unconscious on the iceberg. He's still unresponsive at this time.
Unresponsive to a point. He's comatose, but he's restless.
He's been like that since they found him.
And it's kind of like,
It's like
how
he's
do I
been tortured
define
and can't wake up.
how this is affecting him? And it's like, he's basically in a coma, but his brain is not off. He is still like living out in his mind, but he's unable to do anything. And so we kind of see how that turns out later.
Given the
Or
state
like
of his
what
clothes,
that's like.
will we believe he was attacked by something? Whatever it was, it's put him in this state.
And of course they don't know what it was because they weren't there. So we kind of only can give them so much information from a storytelling standpoint. So that's kind of why they go through this little elimination process. And I don't think this is quite a leap for Tom to think about his Zekrom's research, because he kind of talks about that in the previous Iceberg. But I mean, Tom's not 100% certain what that research was on. So, but it is related to toxicity and like the wholesome crystals in a way. So, and then that's where another big surprise
That's what we thought as well.
is the rest of the mods also got to voice themselves. And this is the first time we're seeing Vanessa, Water Mother. We are seeing Mystic for the first time technically, because she only had a little cameo in the last one. We're seeing Johnny and we're seeing Akira, which Akira...
Overall, his notes, and we think we found all the information we needed.
Akira was a late addition because as before I finished it, Akira then became a mod. So I had to add Akira partway through the development process. So that's kind of why in this scene Akira doesn't have as many lines as everybody else. And so they take, I believe they took a Water Mother line and a Johnny Ray line. Excuse me. So, but it kind of all worked out because this is a lot of exposition, kind of just like communicating to the player kind of what is going on without complicating things too much. So, also, before I'll get back to it when Water Mother speaks again.
It wasn't exactly easy. Zekrom's handwriting is pretty bad.
Yeah, that's Mystic, because Mystic's always got a jab at Zekrom.
At least it wasn't some kind of code.
Oh, and Johnny. So, the story with Johnny is that, which is, it's kind of funny because Tom makes a comment about it towards the end of the, like, during the credits of his first playthrough. Tom makes the comment that it would be really funny if just one of the mods was voiced by somebody else. And that's so funny because that almost happened. Because Johnny was so busy that because we all have personal lives going on, that we can't make it to every stream, and this project is completely like just completely for fun. Johnny almost didn't get back to me about voicing, about character design, which is why we don't see what Johnny looks like. It was very important to me that Johnny had a say on his design. And so I was like, okay, I will make it so you can't see what Johnny looks like under that helmet. And so I basically slapped a helmet on him, and you can kind of see there's a mask under there and like dark sunglasses, so you can't really see him at all. And so I guess spoilers for the next one, we will get to see what Johnny looks like in some capacity. So, but Johnny was able to voice himself, which I was very happy about. And yeah, I don't know what I would have done. I had a couple ideas, and Ghostly Mystic had a couple ideas for how we could do Johnny's voice lines. And I might talk about that later. So I don't know what we'll do. What I'll do, I might do like this long commentary on kind of going in depth with everything with one person's route. I'll probably do what Tom did and start with Steffi and kind of deep dive into everything, and then kind of not necessarily rush through, but go through everything else kind of quickly and kind of skip things around and not be as in depth, but kind of show you what the differences are, like specific differences are, and kind of why that's the case. So
from what we found, it seems that Zekron is undergoing a state of corruption.
And from what Zekron discovered, this state occurs when exposed to high levels of toxicity.
Now, Watermother's voice, I also wanted to have an effect because she also is different from everybody else. And so what I did was, if I can remember how I did it, I put some reverb on her lines. And so it sounds kind of like echoey cave, but also kind of has that water-like aspect. It's not as echoey, but it still has like that, I don't know, it kind of sounds like water, if you get what I mean, in like a fantastical sense. So I hope that comes across. But, and with all these like modifications that I make, I always I asked, because I did it in different ways for Watermother, and so this was the way that we ended up going with, which I think works.
And after it completes, the person becomes a toxic version of themselves.
Since last year, there have been alternating irregular changes in the wholesomeness crystal. We believe that Zekron must have encountered whatever is responsible for it.
Now this line, Mystic had to change up because it was quite a complex line for Mystic the character to say, which makes sense. So it was a bit more, I think the words were there were fluctuations in the wholesome crystals. So fluctuation is kind of a big word, maybe for Mystic. So plus you have to actually be able to kind of get the line out and make it believable. And so sometimes the lines can be a bit of a mouthful for people.
Well, from the looks of it, Zekrom didn't exactly figure that out. But there is a note about something called a mind dive.
Now, Kira loves cats, and so I knew from the start that we needed a cat person as her avatar. And so another idea that we had was, what if Akira makes cat noises every now and then? So Akira, throughout her lines, she meows, hisses at anything threatening, that sort of thing. So again, just trying to build characters and make them all different from each other.
Really? A mind dive? Why, yes. It allows someone's working mind of another person.
Again, this is getting into kind of how the iceberg is set up in this one. And so we get this explanation of how we get there and why it's so different from the last one.
My assumption was always that it was to discover secrets or obtain information.
Now this this line was like, this whole, not necessarily cutscene, but this dialogue about the mind dive was much darker in its first iteration, and Ghostly was a lot more blunt about it. But you can kind of infer from their tone that it was kind of a way of not necessarily torture, but getting information that you want from somebody in like an unethical way. And so that goes into a lot of Ghostly's background as of a character, which Ghostly themselves, the person, is developing as well. And that's the thing, is like, while I am writing up these characters, I'm mainly leaving it to the mods' interpretation of how they want to do it. And so that kind of reflects a bit, like, just from my personal knowledge of them, but also how the mods want to be portrayed, in a way, because obviously Akira's not actually a cat, and Water Mother's not like a fantastical, like the way Water Mother had put it when we were discussing creating her character was like a water nymph, or like not necessarily like a mermaid, but like a fae creature in terms of D&D, that deals with water. And so that's kind of how we created that, and kind of the background for Water Mother as well.
But if we could explore Zekron's mind physically, maybe we could use it to stop the corruption process. If indeed it is a process, then something must be manually changing Zekron as we speak.
Makes sense to me.
Johnny, chime in.
Then it sounds like we need to use this mind dive to save Zekron.
Does anyone know this technique?
And I love the job that everybody did. Like, you all, if you're listening, you all did fantastic, and I love that you all got to voice yourselves. And I appreciate it a lot.
I do. Hold on.
And I just realized, looking at that, I didn't put an exclamation point above Akira, which I could explain away, given that they're a cat, and when they get picked, they're not exactly paying attention, so maybe that's why.
If something happens in there,
we'll just say that that's the reason why. And that's, yeah, we're kind of highlighting the stakes here. Like, in a game where, or a world, I should say, which is why Zekron wasn't too concerned about dying, was because of the Shadow Realm. But we had to have some kind of stakes, because if you're in a game or a world where you can't die, what's worse than that? What can be worse than that? And so that's kind of where this idea of like, okay, if dying is not a concern, maybe losing yourself, like losing your humanity, losing your soul, losing who you are and like what makes you a decent person, maybe that is worse than death. And so that's kind of where that idea came. Because, yeah, Zekron wasn't worried about dying because it meant nothing. But if he was no longer himself and he had no control over who he was, then maybe that's worse than death.
That means we can't send everyone.
That's what the stakes are. You know, instead of dying, you just lose who you are. And you have no control over yourself anymore. And in a way, I don't know whether I want to go this route in the future or not. Whether that person is aware of that or not is the ultimate question. Because then that would be even worse, because you're just watching yourself just do horrible things or be horrible to people, and there's nothing you can do. So, well, we'll see where we go with that.
Mystic's right. We should send a small team in. Maybe 2 of them.
Fun fact about this line is Mystic loves that Johnny says Mystic's right. So, just because Mystic's funny like that. Now this is where we get that Tom obviously has to go, because Tom's the main character of this game.
Then who do you wish to take with you, Your Majesty? I must remain here in order to maintain the mine dive.
And Ghostly is the only one you can't take with you in this case. And there's a bit of behind the scenes for that reason, which I may or may not go into. But it sort of made sense, like, okay. And also, I guess, a balancing issue, which I'll probably get into later, for how I set up Ghostly's abilities. But it made sense that somebody had to maintain the process and watch over it. Because if we sent Ghostly in, then presumably, how would Ghostly get out? You know, it's a bit of like a plot hole, not a plot hole, but like a scenario that is a bit complicated. So it's like, okay, well, let's just make it so the person has to maintain it from the outside. So, and obviously I want to, the way I did it before was that, before I figured this out, you had to constantly, if you wanted to get to this point where you make that choice, you had to do a new game and go through that first fight every time. So then I had, and my beta testers of Ghostly and Mystic were like, is there any way that we can skip that fight, because we just get you killed all the time? And so I'd had to look into how that works, and it's basically just a command where it says, okay, we want to run the save menu. So now, whenever you play, you can just go to the save menu through that, and it starts you right here, which is great. So,
yay! I mean, let's go save Zekron.
Like I said, we'll start with Steffi and kind of go through it slow, and kind of go through the iceberg as intended, and then we'll see. I might do 2 videos of this, otherwise it's going to be one long one, which it probably already is. I don't know what the recording length is at this point, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty long. But we'll go through this, and then we'll go through everybody else's route, because I want everybody to kind of be seen again and talked about a bit more. So, got the little jingle that I found to kind of indicate that, you know, somebody's joined or that something's happened. And so I did this for everybody to kind of give a bit of a cue into how they work, how their play style is. And so Steffi does have a pretty magic-based offensive kit, as well as like a status effect kit, but is also the one that has access to healing magic and reviving. And so she is kind of like the main support, but also a DPS. So like a support DPS. So just because she is like the head of the MOD. So she's the most powerful, but she's also the most compassionate. So just like our queen. So yeah,
Right.
that's kind of her role in this. Of course, we have the 3 Idioteers studio game. Now, the first one was a lone Idioteer, but because that was mainly by myself. But in this, I felt like it should get the full studio name of 3 Idioteers. And this is the main menu music from last time, which I was going to do, but then it felt more fitting to use the other one. And I managed to get the title in, which I was very proud of how to do that. So I'll go into it.
Indeed, we are.
This little intro cutscene to being on it. And because they kind of, it's familiar to them, but it's not familiar. And so everybody kind of goes through this and says different things, but they're all relatively similar, but different enough to where it's like, this is how that person would react. Because I didn't want to make them too different from each other, because you may miss something. In between, there's a bit of stuff where it's like, okay, this isn't like plot important, or it isn't important information for the player to like think about or know about. So
maybe less speculating and more moving, Thomas. We'll figure it out as we go.
Now the way I have these two is like, they're like the ideal couple, you know. They kind of give each other, they can give each other crap, but they love each other, you know. So, and I think just Tom's reaction to everything that Steffi says is just funny to me, because I almost, kind of like Tom says, I almost make Tom subservient to Steffi, which I think is just funny. So, but yeah, we give explanation on how everything works. And yeah, we get into it. So we got our menu here. And if you'll notice down here, I don't know if my mouse probably isn't showing, but you have the currency, and it's Daplings, which the community voted on was the currency. Now, the thing is this might change in the future, because with Tom streaming on Twitch, they're not called Daplings. The channel points are called Dapper Dimes. So I might change that, just to fit in with the lore, you know. So, but this was what it was called before we got like an official currency term in the Dapper Kingdom. So we'll just do that. So now we have everybody's magic and abilities. So everybody has access to a magic element. So Tom has fire and Steffi has light, but in this case it's healing magic for her magic, but her ability magic is what I'm calling it, is radiance, and so it's all about light. And so all of these attacks deal light magic damage, except for Plushie Stampede, which deals physical damage, but is still scaled off of her magic attack stat. And so I could go into kind of breaking this down. So little save is what I've called the revive spell, which Tom has because in case one of the mods gets KO'd. So I figured that was just a good spell for him to have. And then Hell of a Flame is a Hell of a Boss reference. And even the description is kind of a way. Burn the target with a cruel yet entertaining fire. Entertaining Fire is based on a lyric from a Hell of a Boss. I believe it's Hell of a Boss. It could be that, or it could be Has Been Hotel reference, or a lyric from one of those two franchises or the shows, a fan song by Black Griffin. Entertaining Fire is a lyric in there, so I thought it was a cool description. And obviously Tom loves Hell of a Boss and Has Been a Hotel, so I figured it's a good reference to pull. Dapper Keyblade. So this went from being a single move in the previous one to his ability, which made sense to me. So, and Tom clocked it pretty much right away in the upcoming fight. So we have Horizon Slash, which is based on Horizon Zero Dawn. Spider Upper, which is based on Spider-Man. Sonic Fury, which is based on Sonic. And Dredge Impact, which is based on Dredge. So that's kind of like, they're the names that I could come up with that would make, I feel like, sound cool and like make sense with how they work. And so maybe in the future I'll give them more moves, and his will be tied to kind of like the games that he plays on the streams, while everybody else's, like Steffi's, are based on like knowledge I have of her and like kind of things we learn through streams. So but also just fitting with like the element magic or like their class essentially. So like Luminous Beams deals with light, Angel Arrows just deals with holy stuff, Radiant Bombardment because Radiance, and then Plushie Stampede because I wanted to fit in Steffi throwing plushies, but like her just having an army of plushies I thought was really funny. So, and the animation for Plushie Stampede was only sheep. Sheep was the only thing that I could find that would work, that I could pass off as like, oh, these are plushies. So, and unfortunately, this music got copyright claimed, which makes absolutely no sense to me because I used it in the game, which is what the license was for, and then Tom played that game. So it's not like Tom was just streaming that music. You know, he was playing a game that had that music, that had the right to use that music. So, you know, it's just a unfortunate case where like copyright law is so complicated. So it is unfortunate because this PearFinch does a good job with this music, but it got copyrighted for some reason, and that was that. So won't be hearing this music again in the future, at least on Tom's streams. So we'll figure out how to get past that. So we have his first game theory as host, which was Poppy Playtime. His first GT Not Live. This one, I am like 90% sure it is Afton built, like as his first GT Not Live. It could be one of the FNAF Iceberg GT Not Lives with Matt, but I'm like 90% sure it's Afton built. So then we have FNAF Boys, which is him, Dan, and Matt. Of course, that's kind of disbanded because Dan is now Lore Fight Dan. He's not head editor Dan, and Matt's retired. So, but that might move down. That'll probably move down eventually, because again, things change. Now his first GT Live, and I clicked on. We'll talk about that. His first GT Live was the first Theorist Talkback, FNAF Theory Talkback. So, that was his first GT Live appearance. And then this is the FNAF tent. It pretty much is. The Theorist tent, where we have Matt, and the channels in the corners, and then the couch for GT Live. And a late edition which Ghostly and Mystic were adamant that I add, was to include Tom talking about something. And so Tom talks about, in his corner, he just talks about this arcade cabinet, or again, dealing with assets that I have. It's a slot machine, so that's just what I can go with. It's Theory Fighter 4, which is a reference to his channel's banner art, where there's an arcade cabinet that's titled Theory Fighter 4, and I added that the night before Tom was playing the Iceberg, because he got that new banner art like the day before. I think it was fairly soon before the Iceberg was being played, and I was Ghostly was like, could you sneak this in there, just before? And I was like, yeah, I can, as long as Tom doesn't download the file for the game. And so I updated it and snuck this in there. And then at that point, I was like, okay, well, I want to say something about every other corner and do the GT Live couch. So, and of course, we got to make fun of Santi. And this was just a little nod to the year of 87. I don't know. I always got to put a FNAF reference every now and then. So then we have the GT Live couch, talking about Ash and the good job that they're doing. Which today, the day of this recording, Ash was playing Deal or No Deal, and streamed it for about, I think it was 7.5 hours, which is still less than their Wii Bowling stream, trying to get $1 million. But you'd have to watch the stream. I don't want to necessarily spoil it, but they streamed for 7.5 hours, and it was a roller coaster. So we'll get back to that book once we go through all these. We have Lee with taking Tom's franchises from when they get turned into movies. We have Amy, and now this is a reference to when Amy did Tom's makeup, and I should have put in a little picture of Tom with makeup, but I just didn't think about it enough at the time. And of course, he's reluctant to talk about Santi, because why not? So we have this book, and the book made sense to me just because of how Zekron works, but kind of as something that just stands out and something you would look at. Now, I did come up with this on my own as a little poem about the alternative ending, where it is possible to beat that first fight with Zekron. So a journey's beginning, a journey's absence, both can arise at the same time, but only one can be present. Through victory there is no conflict. Though hard to achieve, A strategic poise may be the key. A stunned foe makes for easy blows, and maybe victory you will come to know. So, kind of giving you like, you should focus on defense and then stun. And stun was not always guaranteed to happen. So, but that was kind of setting up like, okay, this is how you increase your odds of winning. So focus on keeping Zekrom alive while also stunning the opponent. So we got this little cutscene, kind of like Tom being confused with how all this works.
It is a bit weird. The tent earlier suggests we're on the Dapper Iceberg.
But this is basically the cutscene that establishes, hey, this is basically the Dapper Iceberg, but it's different.
Well, the mind is a tricky place. Maybe for the most part, Zekrom's mind is comfortable in the form of the Dapper Iceberg. Zekrom likes the beach?
Again, it's like they're grasping at straws, so they're not going to know everything 100%. And so this technically is true. I do like the beach, so. Now, we meet basically our minions at this point. And that is 100% just Ghostly. Like, Ghostly able to do that to their voice. Like, no modifications to the voice at all. It's just pure vocal cord manipulation. So, just being able to sound like that by choice. So, which is really cool.
Looks to me like we have some intrusion.
Now, this is me without any, like, post modification. This is me. I basically put my hands over my mouth like this to kind of get that, like, Darth Vader-esque, like, sound.
But also changing my voice to be low.
So, hold on, I'm gonna cough. Because I didn't warm up beforehand. So,
it's like doing that, but then putting the hands over.
Just to get a different sound. Just so they sound very different from each other. So.
I say we not waste any time and take them out.
Agreed.
Then we get into the fight here. Now Tom is kind of meant to be like the powerhouse in this. And so we're just gonna get through these fights as quick as we can. Critical hit. So let's take that out quick. Speed. So it was kind of important to me to kind of, like I said earlier, to make everybody, and of course I had to drop some stuff so that way if you don't have a healer you can still heal yourself. So 2 chair-ups came.
They didn't stand a chance.
But making everybody different from each other in terms of like how they play and what their role is if you were to have a full party was very important to me, because hopefully in the future we'll get to see a more fleshed out team.
Can't blame him for trying though.
Where you would have 4 party members, which would be interesting to see how Tom sets them up, like who he chooses to have on his team. So we have Toffee, which is of course Tom and Steffi's ship name, basically. Steffi gets her own place on here because she's important. Good time zone, which is our greeting, basically. Wholesome chat is what chat is called. First collab stream was the Binding of Isaac stream with Rye and Dan, which by this point we've seen quite a few collab streams, so which is awesome for Tom because they're just a lot of fun. My Guy, which is what Tom likes to say a lot. Kingdom Hearts, because Kingdom Hearts is his favorite franchise. Wi-Fi Whales. These models will probably change in the future, but I wanted to find something that kind of fit with that. So these spaceships are kind of like fish-esque. So we have Water Mother, because she's part of the lore too, and she's an important part of it. Hashtag blame Santi, because Santi breaks everything when he shows up, and now everything is his fault. We got the Floor era, which we have this picture thanks to Steffi. Yeah, that was quite a time when they were Airbnb hopping. I just feel so bad for Tom's back because I would not be able to sit like that. Sit like that for 2 hours in stream. Thanking the bot because chat is so wholesome that we thank even our robotic friends. Ghostly insisted that it make robot sounds, which I had in mind to begin with as well. So, which you can hear just fine. So, and the numbers are the same as last time, which is the American style date for when the Discord was made. So I feel like that was a good number to have. We have tea with Tom. We get to the Sati Brovilry, because that's just how their relationship is, where they're friends who can give each other crap. So that's how their relationship works.
Tom, look. It's a poison bog. Stepping in that would not be good for either of us.
And so this part is essentially trying to show that the corruption is taking hold. It is affecting. It is changing things. It is kind of showing itself. In that sort of way.
Oh, I know.
So
I was just saying, just trying to keep positive.
Oh man, Steffi is great.
If anyone can save Zekron, it's us. No matter how bleak things might look, we can't lose hope. Yeah, let's keep...
Okay. So now with that, it kind of is meant to discourage you from stepping in here because you do take damage as you step in it. But if you watch the stream, you'll know that there is, which is indicated by this arrow, this little design. If you're an observant player, you'll notice hey, this is kind of pointing down, environmental, not necessarily storytelling, but environmental hint to indicate that if you went all the way to the corner, you'd find that there's a secret area. But we're not going to go there just yet. So we want to go in here. And this was a very early idea that I had to kind of showcase some of the artists in the community who in particular are pretty active within it. So I had this idea of I want to show off and kind of give people the opportunity to kind of express how grateful they are for Tom and this community. So, and just showcase how talented people are, because everybody who was a part of this they do amazing artwork every day. And I'm just so in awe of their talent, because I can't draw to save my life, you know. So we have Starry here. I'll go through everybody. We have Glitch Dragon with a couple things. This is artwork by Glitch. Starry again. This is a reference to the first one. We have Wither with these artworks here. Starry again. Blue Sky J with this awesome FNAF artwork. And so the criteria that I gave people was like, you know, I asked them if they would be willing to submit their artwork or allow me to showcase them. And so I have 100% permission from everybody to show. And I said, you know, you can submit however many you want. If it can be anything, I would prefer it if it was related to the Dapper Kingdom, but I also just want to showcase your talent. And so some of these are more related to like this one from Blue Sky J, and the previous one about Esteban, who we miss, and Tom misses, I'm sure, very much. You know, it deals more with Tom and the Dapper Kingdom. So, but also it's just like, I think remembering back, it's like if it's related to the Dapper Kingdom, or if it's a piece you're really proud of, then go ahead and send it, and I'll showcase it. So we got Wither, another Wither collection, which I still didn't fix that one. This one by Pylon, which is very cool. Starry again with 3 idiot tears here. I apologize if you can hear one of my dogs barking upstairs. Another one by Wither. Another one by Starry. Another one by Starry. Starry submitted a lot. And we got Toro Kami, or AJ, with all the Pokemods that they made for us. So, just go through all of them. And then this last one was by Alexis. So, and that is everybody in the community. And then this little secret right here, which is the, you know, I didn't want it super obvious, but also the change in the tile indicated that something was off. So we kind of walk through that wall, and then we get this full art of Tom. Like, this is basically like the concept art for Tom's model. And so I had to have him with Oath Keeper, because that was he said, his favorite Keyblade. And again, all of the artwork that I commissioned was by AinemsWork, and they crush it every time. Like, I love the amount of detail on these. And as you can see in between, which is an unfortunate location for it, but the keychain is a teacup. It's not what typically would be on Oathkeeper, which I can't remember off the top of my head but I made it a teacup because it's Tom. So, yeah, they did a really good job with all the character artwork that you'll see. So, we'll rush back out here. Now, I could do this fight. I'm just also trying to save time. So let's see how much time has elapsed. Oh, we're already an hour and 4 minutes in, which isn't too bad, I guess, for the first run. But I wanted to include a secret area that is like very FNAF-esque. And luckily, with the assets that I have, I made it so there's a boss fight, a secret boss fight, with essentially a Freddy, essentially, because FNAF haunts us all. So this is Night Terror Freddy, which this is an asset for an enemy in the game in RPG Maker, but I just changed the coloring to be purple to match the overworld sprite. So let's see if we can beat this guy. Yeah, it's just such a shame because this music is so good. So we're not going to hear it again. So. Maybe in the full commentary I'll like fast forward as much as I can. Sleep. Good. We'll take that at the beginning of the heal up. Let's just do a bombardment again. Now the way Freddy works is that, and the way the enemies work in general, is that they have a moveset, and they have nice critical stuff. They have a moveset, and I can set like parameters for when that gets used or like how often it gets used. So, and like what criteria it is for certain moves. So like as Freddy gets weaker, I believe it's 0% to 30% health, he gets access to Jump Scare, which deals heavy damage. But he also has access to a bunch of status moves that he doesn't use as often as he does Extract Remnant or just a normal attack. So Tom makes seems no one can escape it, and then may find rest, and then sets the whole thing on fire. So you've obtained Dapper Keeper for releasing the soul, and then in tiny little text it says, "Hopefully fire works in this universe, because for some reason it doesn't really work in FNAF, even though all the characters seem to think that it should." So, and then the little sprite changes to a beat up plush, which is kind of sad. So, but then, yeah. Oh, I guess I could look at these. We get Dapper Keeper, but Blade of Rang is kind of a reference to Ty the Tasmanian Tiger being like a boomerang, but this little comment says, like, if you throw it, it probably won't come back. So, then we have Hairy Suit, which, you know, is a reference to Spider-Man's Harry Osborn, because he seems to wear a lot of the same clothes as Tom. So Volcano Scepter. This is one thing that Steffi has talked about on stream, that she just loves volcanoes, and so I felt it was fitting to have it as one of her weapons. And yes, I mean, so the way it works in this game is that all the mods have like their third tier equipment, and so does Tom, except for Tom gets access to his ultimate weapon by doing this little side boss, this hidden boss. So the Highland dress, which is just a dress that Steffi wears to the Highland Cow Grove. So just again a reference to the Highland Cow lore. So, but yeah, everybody has 5 tiers of weapon and armor, which hopefully we'll be able to see in future installments. And they all kind of reflect the mod, the character, but also the mod, the person. So, at least as much as I could. So, gotta drink some water. So we got Bartholomew, which is always our mount or pet name. So I had all the variety of mounts that you could possibly have in games and having them just walk around. We have Santi's British friend. Now I won't relive these because we've seen them quite a bit already. But that was when at VidCon, their first VidCon, with Santi's British friend shirt. And of course we have Larkseen. Now this one will probably get updated given recent events with the Smasher Pass and 358 days over 2 with what goes on in those games. And of course we have Bye Bye Snorlax for the infamous moment where Tom released Snorlax in Pokemon Infinite Fusion, which was very unfortunate. But yeah, this did end up, this lair ended up turning into like the Roast Tom lair. That's just how it ended up working out because of a lot of these being in the same lair that I felt like they should be in this lair. Because it's like, this is where things you wouldn't know right away but get mentioned a lot in the community. So we have Tom Warren's No One and Oxygen Not Included because we just kept dying and he wouldn't give us funerals, and Steffi had to send him a note. Matt Pratt sacrifices Tom over Lee because of Kanito Pet. And we have the Vibe Slowpoke by AJ again. So we have Tom Spoon Impression. We have Eric here, which I find so funny that he was like, who the heck is Eric? Which is just so funny. And we got our little Eevee here. Again by AJ. It's just so adorable. And I had to include the little Eevee cry in there. John's shout out, which got moved down because it's been a while now, and some of us are from that point, and some of us are newer, and aren't from there. From when John shouted out Tom's channel. Bunk bed era for when he was living with his parents. Ash and Tom FNAF Yapathon for when they talked about FNAF until they couldn't anymore. I think Tom had almost double Ash's time, which makes sense. Moon Denier, because that doesn't go away from the Meet the Hosts? Meet the New Hosts, I think. And then they play Jackbox, and Tom regrets what he said from that point. But that's thanks to Jason. Thomas Harry, because Tom had a lot of stuff that Harry had. And this is just because, despite everything, you are still you. Kind of Undertale reference. Unpacking the frustration because of our hate for that one guy and unpacking. closet studio move, this is when he first moved out of his original setup. And so the closet area essentially is that one. Food and chat. This one definitely should have been lower because it doesn't happen as often. Tom was right, it doesn't happen as often anymore. So and we have Shadow Realm Snack Monitor, which is ghostly. And so again, another artwork by AinemsWork. And yeah, kind of like the background also kind of deals with like the characters. And so this is kind of like the Shadow Realm in a way, but not also. But kind of had to illustrate their power, but also their compassion with the picnic basket kind of being like the snack side, but also the scythe for like, don't mess with me. So Dapper Nona, this still cracks me up to where Tom had to shift the wrong direction. Okay, maybe we'll watch this one because this one we don't see all the time.
I didn't want Hyrule. Are you
But
insane? We want the Dapper Ring, obviously.
Just
the Dapper Donut.
just it facing the wrong direction and going out just cracks me up.
Mainly because.
And Tom's like, oh, that's not right.
Wait, what's happening? No!
Oh,
Why
man.
is it sideways? No! There is been a fatal error! Oh no!
It still kind of, it bugs me that that's how you cheese
No,
that.
I need to go back. That's hilarious.
Like, the lasers do not hit the center. Like, it kind of bums me out because I loved customizing the gummy ships. But, like, if you wanted to cheese it, that's what you would do. But, which I never did because I didn't know about that technique until Tom did it. So, this is copyright, copyright. Alright, that's for Halloween Town because that always gets copyright struck. Tomothy, some people call him Tomothy for... Is that... It's like Jonathan for John. I can't remember. Zuzu will have to remind me because I think Zuzu's the one that mainly does it. The Dapper Kingdom, just for the community's name. I must have... Oh yeah, I pressed things twice. We got Imposter Tom here. Oh, that image is so cursed, but it's funny. Did I do that one? I did that. Oh, that was the Slowpoke. Yep, we're good. So move it on. Again, going with the design, showing how the corruption has spread.
Indeed, it is spreading
It's
everywhere.
getting worse as they get further in.
Are you worried that he'll
Kind
still be
of.
affected by how much the process is already completed?
Them dealing with the unknown of like, well, we don't know that this will work 100%. Like, they don't know. It was
Well, it's
just
entirely
notes
possible that you may be
in
partially affected
in
even after
Zekron's
we save him.
research. So it's
We
like
don't know that for certain.
they don't know.
All we can do is press on. Once we've saved him, then we worry about what comes next.
Those fools seem to have failed.
Let me see these two again. Wow. I mainly just labeled them as Shade 1 and Shade 2. But the way I think of it is like with Team Rocket grunts. They don't have names, they're just grunts. And so it's like, okay, there's... These minions just sound like this. They can either sound one way or they can sound another. So... yeah. So, they're just kind of throwaway bad guys.
It doesn't matter. We must stop them.
I mean, we don't have to stop them, really.
Now this was because I...
need to let them off with a
this little tone shift and, them being kind of dumb. Just because they're minions and they're not meant to be super smart.
We could be obliterated, but if the obliteration takes a long time,
Oh man, that line took me forever to get out. Because I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe, and like, but I wanted to be like as normal sound, like coherent as possible. So, but this is just them trying to explain, like, kind of clue the player and Tom, the characters, into like, this is what you know, as long as you stop it, everything will be fine. And so that's when Tom says, I love it when the baddies have big mouths. When we were testing this and going through it, and the voices weren't implemented yet, we all being myself, Ghostly, and Mystic, would voice the characters. And so, me being the only male, I had to voice Tom. And Tom's British, and I'm not. And so, I had to do a British accent. And for some reason, whenever I would have to do it in this context, I couldn't do it. Like, I don't know whether it was like performance anxiety or something like that. I just couldn't do a British accent. And it's not like my attempts at a British accent are good. But I know I listen to Tom all the time, and I know how he sounds. But for some reason, I just could not emulate that very well. And so I sounded more like this. So like, you two won't stand a chance. I suggest you step aside and learn from your friend's mistakes. Which sounds, to Ghostly, it sounds more Australian. Or if I leaned more into it, I would sound more, I think, Scottish is what Ghostly said. Kind of like what Lee does when Lee impersonates Tom. And so this is to kind of be like, okay, this second fight's not as easy as the first one. And it's Tom's fault.
What was that about the baddies having big mouths?
Clearly, I need to work on my intimidation. So, I don't know. You'll have to let me know if that sounds good or not. Because I don't know if it does. So we have Shade and the Shades and Corrupted Knight. Just check it out as quickly as we can. Now with Dapper Keeper, these fights are a lot faster because you just deal so much more damage. Oh. Another thing about these enemies is that these enemies do have a weakness to light. And so Steffi is kind of like the ideal one you would take in this scenario. As kind of like on your first playthrough, if you were to play this, Steffi is like the ideal person you want to take because she's support and the enemies are also weak to light. Which I will need to do some revamping because even though they're weak to light, Tom's damage output is still way higher than Steffi's. So, but that could just be because Steffi's main role is a support. So her healing is more in a 4-party system. That would be what you would focus on with Steffi.
Nice work. Still, maybe try not to give them any ideas next time.
And again, Steffi just giving Tom crap is just so funny. I didn't think they would actually learn anything. Again, I don't know if that sounds good or not.
Anyway, let's keep going. It sounded like we still have time.
Of course, I can do it when I'm not, like, thinking super hard about it. And, like, I'm not being, like, listened to by, like, immediately by people. I don't know. I think it was just performance anxiety. Super chat song. This doesn't happen very often anymore. Mainly because people I think since memberships happened, people have been content with doing memberships instead of super chats. But every now and then a super chat will happen, but nothing to the extent of the $50 amount, which there was a soft rule for Tom to do a song of anybody's choice as long as he knew it, if that was the case. Infinite Fusion tier list. That was when Tom did a tier list on the fusions that we had for Infinite Fusion, which I believe that one is privated. Now you can't even watch it. So that one, it will be eventually, I think, towards the bottom because you can't watch it anymore because Tom privated it. Because he did, I don't know exactly why, but he did the tier list, and then he did Astral Spiff's FNAF quiz. So I don't know what the reasoning was behind that, but Tom privated it, and so it's. If you were there, you know what it is. If you're not there, then you don't know what it is. So, Lara Croft voice actors. Another cool fact that Tom worked with the voice actors. Jeff Marrow, our version of Jack Sparrow, because that Kingdom Hearts guy did not sound like Johnny Depp. Blondes, which is just part of the lore now. So. Of course. Now, this goes into... because this is the first one where Steffi comments on it. And so, all the mods comment on different things. Kind of in relation to them, but also, like, fitting with their character. And so, with Blondes being what Tom's type was... it kind of showcases like, hey, love is real. But then as a game developer, I wanted to kind of do a bit of fourth wall breaking, but also like in universe it's like, well, this is Zekron's mind, so maybe it's kind of like playing tricks on Tom. And so Steffi for a moment is blonde. And Tom's like, what? And Steffi's unaware because she doesn't, see it, but Tom does. And it's just like, huh, that's strange. So, it was just really funny to be able to do that, and, make a joke out of it. Sonic Frontiers map, which is the worst map ever. We got Jack Armour Tom, which is from the same stream that the Moon Denier came from, about Tom being able to tap super fast. A broken laptop area where it was broken for almost 2 months. I think it's 2 months, which was just upsetting because it shouldn't have been broken that long, according to Tom. Like, they just did not do their jobs correctly. That's Ash Ketchum Challenge, which moved down quite a bit from last time, where Tom played through Fire Red as Ash with his team. Mantag Plush Fund. There's a little Mantag there on top of Eevee, which Mystic and I helped Steffi get. The Dapper Quiz, which we do every year. That Ghostly really heads up. Like, that's Ghostly mainly puts that together, and I mainly put this together. But you know, we both help each other out, and the mods are definitely more involved with the quiz. Whereas the mods led their voice and their ideas to this, and I put it together essentially. Sneaking versus sneaking. That was from Uncharted, and mainly that came from Uncharted, but also just any game that Tom has to sneak just does not work. First GT short is Sonic. Sonic is broken, dealing with Sonic's speed, specifically in Frontiers. We have Esteban. We missed Esteban, but he just couldn't make the trip over. La La Land is his favorite movie. Wobba Fett is a Nuzlocke killer. Killed several of us in the first ever Nuzlocke. Axe throwing, because Tom's good at axe throwing. The Technical Difficulties Dance, which is from Melody of Memory. Now, Starry, I believe it was Starry, clocked it with this section. But this section is actually a heart. Which, again, going through, like, just this idea of mind dive, I was like, I need to make each of these kind of look different from each other. I was like, well, why don't we, show a heart and show it being kind of corrupted. So, but being symmetrical was kind of an issue for me. Tom's unpacking versus Steffi's unpacking, because Tom tends to not unpack. Now that's because of his birch allergy, I believe is what it was. Because he can't peel potatoes. Wedding on Stream was from a long time ago, where I believe it was Womp and Z got married? Or was it Womp and Hayden? I can't remember. We have Johnny Ray's origin story for being a mod, where he was over on Twitch, and then Tom messaged him on Twitch to come to YouTube when he made the switch, but now Tom is back on Twitch, so Loxian, which is Tom's D&D character. The plushie tier list, which, again, this is one that you won't see. We did, because Pokemon Infinite Fusion was not working, so we did a little tier list for plushies that they had. Ash and Amy are Tom's Brock and Misty. That was from a stream where Tom had to grind to level up, I think, for the Elite Four for the Ash Ketchum Challenge. And I believe I asked if, or it was just a discussion, if Tom was in Ash Ketchum's position, who would his Brock and Misty be? And he tossed around some ideas, but then he settled on Ash and Amy would be great traveling companions. So, Super Bro Shoulder Tap, which is from which is from Spider-Man again, because of how Harry and Peter interacted by tapping each other on the shoulder, which does happen. Team Thirst and Dapper Friends me the Caps rule. And now this isn't much of a thing anymore, because people have kind of changed how they interact in chat. It was just for a period of time, it was a little overwhelming for the mods, because it can read as aggressive, but also like dominating, because it just takes up so much more space. And so, but whenever like Dan or Amy or somebody else that Tom knew came in, they would do caps lock. But it's like they're not there every stream, and they also work with Tom, so it's like we're not going to get them in trouble for that. Lee and Tom bet on the game of the year for Astrobot. Again, another picture provided by... Nope, this one actually was provided by Tom as proof. But now, I didn't get to point this out on stream, but because he owed Lee $5, I set it to where after that event, you lose 5 Dapplings. So you went from having max currency to now being 5 short. Posh Tom was a nickname Tom had. Tom is an ant. And we won't relive this one just because it's easy to explain. Tom wore a shirt that he thought said I'm going to be an uncle, but it actually said I'm going to be an aunt because he was wearing Steffi's shirt. Who's that Ghastly? Another thing he mentioned on GT Live about whenever during a Pokemon episode it would be like, who's that Pokemon? And that's the only one he got wrong. Tangela card was his first Pokemon card. Tiny build control, that's relatively new, but it's just that his Xbox control that he uses is from Tiny Build, the gaming developers who made Hello Neighbor, I believe. I believe that's who made Tiny Build. Or who made Hello Neighbor. That's who Tiny Build is. Disney Fox is where he used to work. The fourth theorist, anyway. Steffi threatens to throw plushies. She hasn't done it, but she's always threatened to do it. Car shuts down post proposal. This is one I changed because it just said Tom and Steffi love story, which is just how they met. But in a previous stream, he had mentioned that their car broke down after Tom had proposed to Steffi, and I just thought that was a great, story. So, Can't Help Falling in Love is the song he sang to propose. Pretty Dude Fakemon is somebody that Tom was really a fan of back in the day for all the Fakemon that they did, and we got to see on stream. Some sick ASMR streams. That was whenever Tom was feeling sick. His voice gets lower just naturally, but also quieter, so it's like, hello everybody and welcome to the streams. Thank you for being here. I don't know if that sounds good or not, because I don't know how ASMR works entirely. Now this was entirely just because of Pokemon. Just being, and kind of poking fun at it, but kind of rewarding you for just exploring and being like, well, surely there must be something in here. So I kind of make fun of it and be like, you can look in there if you want, but I can't guarantee that something is in there. But of course, there does end up being something in there. And you can say no at any point. But if you do keep going, you get the Case of Essence, which is a bunch of stat increases. And so, the way I did it was I always gave them based on their class and kind of what they needed. So, actually give that to Steffi so she can be allowed to stay alive. But that's kind of how I did it, but Tom just gave it to himself. So We'll do a little save because we're really far. Oh yeah, I guess that's a way to check too. Gosh darn it. So maybe 36. Not too bad. We got Ty the Tasmanian Tiger here. Nominated for Pro Max Award, which is the Oscars for promos. I believe that's what he said. And now, this was one of the best parts of the stream, because Tom's explaining, you know, during some streams when he would go check out the Game Theory channel, it would automatically play the channel trailer, which would be, you know, Matt going, saying, "Hello, Internet, welcome to Game Theory," and it would be just so loud, and chat would not see it coming, so then it would jump scare us. And Tom was so focused on explaining it. I don't think, because last year, whenever you activated it, it instantly jump scared you. But this time, I wanted to make sure that it was a bit more clever, and like being like, oh, maybe he's not going to jump scare me this time, so he's just explaining it. But the minute, so that activates a switch, and it says, it's like, oh, you've talked to the statue that says MatPat jump scares. So the second you step on the tile to the right, then it jump scares you. And Tom was very upset about that. So, but I got him good. So it was just a lot of fun. And that's ultimately what these Iceberg games are about. It's meant to be a fun little reflection and kind of a better, not a better way, but like a different way to look at an iceberg. You know, kind of gamify it and make it a little more fun and engaging for people. So, and I don't know. I hope that these are at least enjoyable for you guys. Because it would be really simple just to do what I did with the first year, like the very first year, and just do an iceberg of it. But I don't know. I think it's fun, and I like to put my creative energy into something like this because it's a lot of fun to do. Life of Ludovic is a student film that he did that is on his, what he calls his dead channel right now. Imposter MatPat joined stream. This is when MatPat joined a Ty the Tasmanian Tiger stream, and Tom was not sure or not convinced that it was actually him. He thought it was somebody that was pretending to be Matt, but it actually was him. Working in Media, another series he did on his dead channel. Crash Bash and Pokemon Gold were his first two games, one being a console game, one being a handheld. Let's Talk Theory, another series he did on his dead channel. Chat Text versus Tom's Lights. This is down here because that was a long time ago, but chat used to be different colors on YouTube. And sometimes they would match Tom's background lights, and sometimes they wouldn't. But it's like, it's a weird coincidence. Facebook streams, because he was started on, not started, but like was an early adopter of that, but then obviously that didn't take off because it's Facebook. We got no Pokemon proposal because Steffi didn't want that, so it's a chance for Steffi to step into the crossfire. Alex Rider books, because he liked those growing up and read them all. Rejected by America once, which is technically twice, I believe, is what he said. But where the process, he got rejected one time. But now, obviously, that's not the case anymore. the deal for meeting Tom and Matt, which again will probably change in the future, which we talk about on stream. I don't know if I can't remember now because it's been a couple of minutes since the beginning, but I do think you should watch the stream before watching this. If you haven't, just because, that's how you should watch it. And because this is a lot of background stuff. And kind of showing the process and my thinking for it. This was, if we were to meet Tom and Matt at the same time, you would be excited to meet Tom more so than you would Matt, just as kind of a joke on Matt. Most likely to become famous was something in his yearbook that his classmates said would be his prediction, which technically became true. Me6 and Streambot are brothers. That was something that chat came up with, but obviously Streambot chat likes more than Me6 because Me6 likes to butt in a lot in Discord. A different Pidgeotto because the Pidgeotto changed genders because Tom had to recover his data during the Ash Ketchum challenge. Form teacher predicts the future with a little poem about Dapper specifically. So the poem deals with Tom looking dapper. Tom and his brother had a Timon and Pumbaa impression. This again was brought up during the Ash Ketchum challenge, where chat and Tom kind of figured out what his team would be, what his typing would be, what his gym would look like, and the trainers inside, and what his pun name. I personally like Thermos. But Moltom also works, but maybe in the future we'll be able to explore that a bit more. So we'll go up to this room over here because this one will be quick to talk about. But given last year, I really wanted to make sure that Tom had a heads up because of how emotional this next entry was. But I am so thankful that his dad is doing better, and that just so many miracles, happened to where his dad is doing much better. But I felt so bad. I felt so bad about not giving him a heads up because at the time his dad wasn't doing as good. But thankfully, the Big C and Me, his dad's channel and charity, thankfully his dad's doing all right. And, things are looking better, and so hopefully that just continues to be the case. So this room is purely lore. It's purely about the Dapper Kingdom and not necessarily about the Iceberg. And kind of fleshing out the Zekron's character a bit because we don't see that as much in this. So a bunch of random notes. So this is a reference to when Tom played is it Sonic Generations? And he played the Shadow expansion, where there were a lot of levels where Shadow was breaking stained glass. And I think it was Steffi that brought up well, how much would all this stained glass cost? So if anybody was going to have random notes about that, it was going to be Zekron. And then chair designs because of Tom's putting together a chair, which was a bit rough, and the chair wasn't very comfortable anyway. Dossiers on all the mods because Zekron takes notes. A bestiary because Zekron keeps track of all the creatures. And this one, you can't step in the glass because stepping on glass is bad. Sometimes your greatest enemy looks back at you in the mirror. And that is kind of a reference to the fact that the corruption process is about corrupting you as a person and making you a toxic version of yourself. And sometimes you wrestle with that. You know, your worst enemy is yourself. Kind of like, up to put it in a more lighter term, is like your biggest critic is yourself. And so it kind of touches on that idea that there are, you know, people in the world who will break you down, you know, who will try and bring you down. But sometimes the worst one of them is yourself because you beat yourself up. And so we get to this one, and this kind of further expands on that. But this is kind of the way I set it up, which again was a very last minute addition, was like a conversation between our big bad and Zekron in his comatose state. So our big bad goes like, I know what you fear. And then Zekron replies, don't pretend you know me. I know enough. Leave me alone. I'm afraid it's too late for that. They will purge you from me, I know they will. They go back, it alternates who's talking. Your faith is admirable, but we both know you can't hold out forever. Why not just give in? Because I don't want to be like you. No, it's because you don't want to see what you are capable of when you are not shackled by weakness. Kindness is not weakness. And so, again, it's kind of highlighting how if the process takes hold, then Zekron will see what he's like when he loses all control and like his ability to show kindness, even though he could show he could show no empathy. So I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like when when your corruption process takes hold, you lose all empathy. You just don't care anymore. You become unable to show compassion. You become unable to show empathy. And so you watch yourself become that and watch yourself act like that. And that's kind of, that ends up being worse than death in this world, in this universe. You could have so much more if you just let me in. It wouldn't compare to how much I would lose. Soon you won't have a choice. Then leave me in peace. We shall see how this plays out. Very well. I shall delight in the moment you break free of your bonds and come crawling back to me on your knees to tell me that I was right to enlighten you. Kind of showing like the maniacal nature of a villain. Of like, I'm doing this for your own good. Like, being evil is a good thing, even though it's not. And Zekron retorts with, and I shall delight in the moment when I am rid of your lies, when you no longer haunt me with your whispers, when you no longer instill doubt in me. And the interesting thing is that our big bad replies with, "You want to know the truth? That's not me." Which leads back to the mirror, where Zekron thinks that it's an outside force that affects his mind in a way where, yes, toxicity affects you from the outside, but it also affects you from the inside itself, because you deal with outside forces, but you also deal with inside forces. You know, you deal with your self-doubts, you deal with lies that you tell yourself. And so toxicity knows that. Our big bad knows that. That he is just a force coming at you from the outside. But inside, essentially he's trying to reach that inside force, that inside toxicity that you can have towards yourself, and he's trying to bring that to the surface. And he tells Zekron that that's not him. That's not him that's instilling fear in him. That's not him that's instilling doubts in him. That's himself. That's Zekron's own self that's doing that. And so it's kind of a lesson of, like, to not be so hard on yourself, to not instill yourself with doubts, you know, to kind of push past the, not necessarily self-loathing that you may have, but like push past the toxicity that you can feel for yourself. Like, be positive about yourself. You know, don't trick yourself, don't gaslight yourself. You know, be more positive about who you are. You know, and there's a song that recently came out by a band that I found fairly recently, like maybe within the last year or two. The band's called Citizen Soldier, and they just came out with a song called Inner Critic, and it talks about that a lot, where, you know, people are so kind to us, but we tell ourselves, like, oh, they've got it wrong, or like, they're just being nice, when they're being genuine. You know, they're telling you that, you know, you are a good person, you're doing a good thing, you are worth so much more than you give yourself credit for. And so a lot of that is kind of along those same veins. This is just kind of a funny little reference to last time. But this time I was like, let's put something funny in there. So this is an armor. This is, I think, the second tier armor for Zekron, where he could wear this as a second tier armor. So, but yeah, nobody else can wear it because Tom decided that Zekron and myself had to be Lapani in the Nuzlocke because it would be too weird if anybody else was. We have the new Book of Forbidden Lore here. So this first page is from last year. And then this is from this past, from last year till now, which, given the collab streams that have been happening, it will be getting a lot bigger. Like, probably 2 pages worth of stuff. And so I think I'll play this like play these in the next next video, because again this is getting really long, and that would be just a couple minutes of that, and we still have to fight the last boss here. So save. We've almost been going 2 hours, so this is our final confrontation.
I don't like the look of this, Tom.
What a surprise.
And we get our big bad here.
I would never have guessed that the king and queen would personally try to interfere. I am honored.
And so this line does change depending on who you bring. So, because I wanted it to be a little personalized each time. And of course Tom is like, well, this thing looks like everything else and doesn't seem that bad.
Thomas, focus.
So, and then we get this long monologue from him.
I am much more than I appear. I pull the string.
Which, in the future, he will look different. We're gonna skip some of this.
My work here is done. Would you like to meet your new friend?
Now, there was a part of me that wanted to do where you fight Zekron, the corrupted version of Zekron. But I would then need to come up with assets for that. So instead, I decided to make it so there's this parasite that kind of ends up controlling you, controlling the host that it is corrupting.
That is the beautiful parasite that has been eagerly waiting. As the toxicity developed here,
he kind of dives into kind of how it works.
It will allow your pathetic lawkeeper. But first,
so he's vague enough to kind of talk about it, but also it's enough detail for the player, for Tom to understand that that's kind of how it works.
So long, Your Majesty.
So
we'll deal with it one day, but right now we have more pressing matters to attend to.
So there's our boss fight. Oh man, this music is so good. It's just, again, it sucks so bad, and I just like, I'm so frustrated that it got copyright struck. Critical on that, it's gonna help a lot. So yeah, this made more sense to me than having it be a fight against a corrupted Zekron, because at that point the process is completely done, and so you wouldn't fight him within his own mind, you would fight him in the physical world. So this is kind of like, you need to beat this thing in order to cleanse it completely. So hopefully we'll do it pretty quickly, given that we have the Dapper Keeper. So he is getting weak now because he's doing a triple attack, which is one of the indications that he's been weak. So we'll heal up. Yeah, and he just unloaded on Tom. So we'll heal up like that. finish that off. It's a little animation, which was perfect for that. So we kind of cut away and kind of explain like, oh, this is kind of what happens afterwards, instead of having to completely show it, because I feel like it's just easier to explain what happens. So within seconds of defeating the toxic corruptor parasite, the Mind Dive team was pulled back. Plus, and then it's like, it doesn't say who specifically you took, in this case, because at that point it doesn't matter. And it's like, some of you might be wondering, like, well, which path is the canon one? And in my mind, it didn't matter which one you took in the end, and for the story's sake, because the end result is the same. Ideally, I would think Steffi would be like the most canon, if that makes sense, because it would just make the most sense for Tom to take Steffi with him. But it's not to say that any of the other routes aren't canon, because those routes are meant to be like basically further explain things in a different way, and you kind of learn different information from those routes that could have happened and that you could find out at any other point, but you just find them out in that context, if that makes sense. So, but yeah, Zekron wakes up like nothing happened. Hugging, high-fiving, shoulder tapping, I felt was important to include in there. Then we got this little feast.
I still can't thank you all enough for saving me. I don't know what it would have become of me if the corruption had taken hold.
Which we didn't find out. But maybe in another universe, I probably would have done that.
Fair enough.
Still, it is a frightening thought that one could completely lose themselves because of toxicity.
This is kind of the moral message at the end of like surrounding yourself with too much toxicity can kind of cause yourself.
I completely agree. I wouldn't want to
you
have
to
to
lose
face
yourself.
if it came down to that.
And to think that all it took
And it doesn't
was
take
a single
much.
entity of toxicity to start it all.
That's why I believe we should do all we can to stop any toxicity from even having the opportunity to affect anyone.
And that's kind of
That is why it is the perfect place for everyone who wants to avoid
I'm just going to let them explain it,
toxicity.
because I'm going to just be reiterating what they say.
Well, the wholesome nature of the kingdom is constantly at war with toxicity, pushing it far away.
But like Water Mother said, it only took a single entity to cause this much trouble.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is all too true.
And that's why it's important to
when someone
surround
is down,
yourself with positive
we'll do
people.
all we can to lift them up again.
You know,
no different than what
so
you
that
all did for me.
They can pick you up and you can pick them up when they are falling into darkness and being overcome by toxicity.
No one is alone in the Dapper Kingdom.
And that's just
we just need to make sure
this
everyone knows
community
that.
does best.
So when
You know,
toxicity
keeping
shows
each other,
itself, we will be there.
keeping
to
each other
snuff
up
it out.
and building each other up.
But until that day, all we
and
can do is prepare,
just
and be ready for
not
what
tolerating
comes
any
next.
toxicity at all. You know.
I'll try not to solo the big bad next time.
Yeah, this is just a jab at myself. So, but yeah, that is the second Iceberg in a nutshell. Ooh, it's pretty late right now for me. But yeah, written by me, programmed by me, designed by me, produced by me. Sprites by White Dragon. Snortlax by Skate Filter 5. So we got the voices that I did, voices that Ghostly did, Queen, Steffi, Tom. I find it funny that I marked it like that, patting myself in the back. But Vanessa, Watermother, Mystic, Akira, and Johnny Ray. Again, Johnny Ray was almost not voiced by himself, but I'm thankful that you were able to do it, Johnny. Starry, Lexus Glitch, Blue Sky J, AJ, Wither and Pylon, thank you so much. You guys are so incredibly talented. AinemsWork, if you're watching, thank you so much. You did an incredible job with all those artworks. PearFinch, even though you copyright struck Tom, your music was good. Youngtown, I hope you're doing all right now, but all your music is great, and I'm glad I could feature one of it in here. And then the reward for doing each route is basically seeing the mods and their character artwork, so also done by AinemsWork. So we got Radiant Queen Steffi, and so the dress that Steffi's wearing should look familiar to you. Maybe, if you're around for Peach's Showtime, because that's supposed to be the Radiant Peach dress. Because Steffi liked that dress, so I was like, you know what? We're gonna make it canon that Steffi's wearing that dress. So, and this little sappy message at the end. And yeah, like this says right here, I don't know what I'm gonna do for the next one. We have ideas, but like it has to make sense. So we're gonna try and figure it out and make it even more interesting than this one. Yeah, thank you to all the mods. You guys are my rocks in this. You guys kind of push me to do it and help me along the way and lend your voices and make it all possible. All of you Dapper citizens, you give me the strength to do it, and your excitement just makes it that much more possible and enjoyable and worth doing. And Tom, thank you so much for this community again. I'm gonna say it probably every year at the end of one of these. So thank you so much for this community. Like, I don't know what life would be like, quite honestly, if I wasn't a part of this community. And I appreciate that so much. So, and yeah, thank you for being down for our silly ideas with the quiz and this Iceberg. But we do it all out of love for this community. So thanks for playing it not just once on stream but twice to get all the secrets. So that's kind of what we'll do in the next video, for me anyway. We'll go through everybody else's route pretty quick to kind of just highlight their characters in a way. I don't know when that will be, but I really wanted to get this one done. So yeah, that is it for the main playthrough, I guess, of the Dapper Kingdom Thin Ice, or if you just want to call it the second Dapper Iceberg, you can definitely call it that too. So if you made it this far, thank you for listening to me and kind of having a curiosity to learn more. So we'll see about next time. I'll go through everybody else's route and kind of talk about them more and talk about their characters a bit more. I hopefully won't be that this long of a video, but I hope you enjoyed, and hope you have a good time zone.